Here's a question that might make you a little uncomfortable. What if you never run out of money, but still miss out on the life you could have lived? You've spent decades saving, sacrificing, planning, always thinking ahead. But now it's finally your time to enjoy it, and you're hesitating. Because what if the market crashes again? What if I don't have enough? You're not alone. Many retirees live far below their means, not because they have to, but because something inside tells them to be careful. And in the process, they quietly trade joy for security. But what if you could feel confident enough to enjoy more of what you've worked for? Now let's be clear. Some retirees are consciously afraid of spending. They've lived through 2008 inflation, volatile markets, they worry about the future, and those worries are real, I get it. But for many others, it's not fear, it's habit. They've spent their whole lives providing, saving, delaying. They were the dependable ones, the careful ones, and after 30 or 40 years of living that way, that mindset doesn't just disappear when you stop working. And in fact, sometimes it gets a little bit worse because you don't have that regular paycheck coming in. That's why people often lean on rules of thumb like the 4% rule, which essentially states that you should be able to spend 4% of your investments because you should be able to make 5 or 6%. Therefore, in theory, it prevents you from spending down your money to zero. The 4% rule gives structure, and people like structure. They like rules of thumb to live by. It's a way to stay disciplined, a sense of safety. But here's the thing. That rule was built for worst-case scenarios. It's designed to protect assets, not guide to a fulfilling life. According to a letter by Vanguard in November of last year, 2024, even the 60-40 portfolio has averaged 6.8%, and 70-30 and 80-20 portfolios only go up from there. So the question is, do you need to spend as little as you've perhaps been told? Whether you're in camp 1 of those who are consciously afraid to spend from past experiences or camp 2 of those who limit spending out of habit, either way, there may be a better option for helping you live and spend the way you'd really like to, without worry. If you're new here, I'm Rob. I'm a certified financial planner, and this channel is dedicated to helping you make better financial decisions than you otherwise could on your own. Today's video is not just about having enough. It's about knowing how much more is possible when you're being strategic with your spending. And to show you what that looks like, we're going to walk you through of a real-life example of clients that we were working with just the other day. For privacy purposes, we've changed the names, but the numbers are very real. For today's video, we're going to call them Fred and Joanna Miller. We were meeting with Fred and Joanna just the other day, and we were trying to encourage them and explain that they're able to spend more money than what they've been doing. And I've been working on this for a few years with them, but they still have trouble enjoying the finer things in life, even though we've been able to show them that they have far more money than what they're ever going to need and are going to be able to pass their 2 kids substantial wealth, far more than they ever dreamed that they would be able to. And so when we talked more in depth with them about why they're having troubles just spending and enjoying a little bit more, keeping so much money in cash, they explained that it comes from a history of experiences, from their own experiences living through the great financial crisis, seeing their accounts drop down quite a bit and seeing how long it takes for them to recoup. But not just that, it also comes from experiences that they grew up around with their parents and their parents getting burned in bad stock market investments and things like that. And so they have all these experiences that are both consciously and subconsciously impacting the decisions that they're making with their own money today. And they've even admitted it is limiting them from enjoying life the way that they would really like to be able to. Let's take you through where Fred and Joanna stand today and show you some of the scenarios that we showed them that ended up being able to help them move forward and even right after the meeting, go home and book their next trip. So with that being said, let's dive in. Joanna and Fred are both 67 years old. They're retired, they're debt-free, they're receiving about $50,000 a year from Social Security, plus about $12,000 a year from a pension that Joanna had from being a teacher. They've saved about $1.5 million in retirement accounts and other taxable investment accounts, and Fred also recently received an inheritance of around $190,000. They have two adult children ages 32 and 35, and they just recently had their first grandchild. They'd like to be able to leave behind some wealth for their kids, but their goal is not to be able to set them up for life. Both of their kids are doing well and off on their own. They currently spend about $60,000 a year on their core living expenses, and then they also take a trip to the beach once a year, which costs them about $7,500, which they absolutely love, and they did admit they would like to be able to do more than once a year if they felt they could. On the screen, you can see here our base projection for Fred and Joanna's wealth if they were to live out until age 95. Currently, their accounts are moderately invested, and so we're using an average growth rate of 6.8% net returns. So nothing crazy, nothing too high, nothing too low. But as you can see, because of the amount of money that they're currently spending, if they were to live into their 90s, they're projected to have almost $5 million in just investable assets that they would pass to their kids. The image you're seeing here does not even include their primary residence or any personal belongings of wealth that would also pass to them. So when we showed them this, they're very happy that they're able to pass this much wealth in theory to their kids, but even they admitted that, hey, this is great, but we don't necessarily need to be able to pass this much to our children. And that if we felt more comfortable spending more, we might. So what we did for Fred and Joanna was we built out a number of different scenarios to show them the impact of them making different decisions with their money and how those decisions could impact their long-term retirement plan and projections for total wealth. So we're going to start off with some basic ones. One of the things that I suggested, since they love going to the beach, something that they look forward to every year, was that whether they go one extra trip or if they go multiple times over some weekends, I said, well, what if you spent an extra $15,000 a year in addition to the $7,500 that you already spend going to the beach each year for the next 15 years, an extra $15,000? What impact would that have on their long-term wealth? And so when I turn on that added $15,000 expense, you can see here over the course of their lifetime, in the grand scheme of things, the impact of spending an extra $15,000 a year going to the beach a few more times or renting a nicer house, whatever it is that they choose to do, has a very minor impact on the total amount of wealth that they would be able to still pass to their kids, and it certainly doesn't put them at risk of running out of money. So another thing we added to it is one of their sons is living in a major metropolitan area. The homes are very expensive there. Their son is doing well, but he could use a little bit of help with a down payment. So I said, hey, what if we withdrew $50,000 extra on top of what you already need to go help your son with a down payment? How would that impact your long-term projections? And so when we turn on that factor and we assume this happens in 2026, you can see again here, looking at the big picture, we still have a very minor impact. They have their first grandchild, and we talked, and they said that if they felt that they were able to, they'd love to be able to start funding a 529 college savings plan for him. And they said, well, we'd like to be able to put $50,000 in there if we could. And so we said $5,000 a year for 10 years to spread it out. What impact would that have? And keep in mind, this is on top of helping their son with an additional $50,000 down payment and the $15,000 a year extra going to the beach. And so we added the $5,000 a year towards the 529 plan for the next 10 years. And again, you can still see living out until their late 80s or early 90s. Yes, the wealth is down a few $100,000, but in the grand scheme of how much they're able to pass to their children, the impact is relatively minor. And finally, another item that we talked about was them being able to give more money to charity. They are big on volunteering with their church and all kinds of other activities. And if they could, they'd love to be able to give about $10,000 a year to various charities. So I said, great. Let's look at adding another $10,000 a year to charities for the next 10 years. And so when we add on that additional expense, again, you can still see, yes, the numbers are coming down a little bit, but most importantly, they're able to do all of these extra things, and they are still nowhere near any danger of running out of money. Another factor that we want to consider here, anytime that we're doing long-term projections, and I am a believer in doing the whole plan for the worst, hope for the best. So right now, we are assuming a 6.89% average return on their investments. But let's say that we were doing all of these expenses and we backed the returns all the way down to 4.5%, which would be 4.5% on average every year for 30 years. Has never happened before. It would be extremely below average, not likely to happen, but let's look at the impact of that anyways. And so, when we add in that factor saying they're spending all of this extra money, which for the Millers at $5,000 a year, $10,000 a year, $15,000 a year, that's an extra $30,000 a year in expenses they're adding and a one-time expense of $50,000. We are backing down the returns on their accounts from 6.8 to 4.5. And you can see here, yes, there is a significant impact on the total amount of wealth that they would pass to their kids, but they're okay with this. They said, hey, if we give each of our children $1 million each, we're happy with that. And keep in mind that this picture does not include the value of their home. It does not include a little bit of life insurance or any other personal belongings that would also pass. And so while, yes, the total value of their state is less, they've been able to do all these things, which likely would bring them a significant amount of joy. We're stress testing against far below average returns, and they are still at no risk of really running out of money at any point in time. And this is assuming they live till age 95. So we're using a long longevity in life as well. So it's a great takeaway here to be able to see, look, sometimes that extra trip or that extra expense or a few $1,000s a year when you're significantly underspending to start with, it is not going to have as big of an impact on your long-term retirement plan as you might think, even when we're stress testing for the downside scenarios of only 4.5% returns. And keep in mind, this is just average. They could end up down here a little bit, but they could also end up way up here, even in this scenario. Okay, so those are some basic expenses that we looked at, adding some extra trips, giving to charity, things like that. These are all things that we talk about with clients on a regular basis. Now, let's look at something a little bit more extreme. Let's say, well, what if they wanted to buy the beach house? Not just go there, not just go on an extra trip, but they want to buy their beach house and they don't want to sell their primary home. They want to stay there, but they want to buy the beach house. And they haven't even told us that they want to buy the beach house, but I wanted to show them this example just to stress the point of how much flexibility they really do have to go out and enjoy life. And so what we said is, let's say they found a property for $450,000. So condo, small house, things like that. Maybe it's not right waterfront, but it's a couple of blocks from the beach. Pick any given beach town on the East Coast. So let's say $450,000. We're going to say a $100,000 down payment withdrawn from their investments. And then I'm going to say that there are $20,000 of annual expenses associated with the beach house because HOAs, insurance, things like that. And so when we turn on these factors, we can see again here, look, yes, total portfolio assets that they would be passing to their children are less than if they never bought the beach house. But we're clearly showing here that they're able to go buy this beach house and they are still not in any danger of running out of money or not having enough money to live the life that they would like to live. Now, let's take this and let's also add on the super conservative investment returns extended for 30 years. And you can see, okay, there's a little bit of downside here, right? We're getting closer to some example of running out of money. But again, this is age 95. Life expectancy is still more like back here. And again, this is only portfolio assets. So if I flip over here and we take a look from an estate planning standpoint, and let's just take this same scenario and let's run it out till age 85. Let's say they live till their 80s, and let's look at an overview. When we factor in their properties and not just their portfolio assets, they are still passing almost $3.5 million in wealth to their heirs, which they are more than satisfied with, giving each child over $1.5 million. And finally, one last example here is just to show you a pure increase in living expenses. So we kind of already showed you an example with 25 to 30 on top of their 60. Let's show you if they spent $40,000 a year more every single year going forward for the next 30 years on top of the $60,000 they're already spending. So a total of $100,000 a year in living expenses, they are still in no risk of running out of money. Even when we drop the returns, yes, the returns are lower, but we would still consider this a 100% probability of success. They are in great shape. And I think it's fairly safe to say that if the Millers were spending an extra $40,000 a year, that would go quite a long way to change their lifestyle a little bit and likely have a significant impact on the way that they go about enjoying the rest of their lives. Here's the reality. Many retirees don't overspend. They underenjoy. Not because they have to, but because they never stop to ask what else is possible. If you weren't worried about the money or the stock markets, what would you do differently? Who would you help? Where would you go? You've done the hard work and you've earned the freedom to make those choices. Now, it's about having the clarity to make them with confidence. If you're interested in learning more about how we might be able to help you with your retirement spending, there's a link below in the description where you can book a free 60-minute consultation. We'd be happy to chat with you and at a bare minimum, get you pointed in the right direction. Because retirement isn't just about preserving wealth, it's about living well. Thanks so much for joining us today. Don't forget to subscribe for more content just like this.